Should you lease or should you finance? This is a contentious topic that has been debated on for years, if not decades. And in this video, I want to talk about why leasing, for the vast majority of people, is a terrible idea. So let's get started. But before I do that, I would like to thank the sponsor of this video, EQ Analytica. It's no secret that electric vehicles are the future. In fact, the overall market share for electric vehicles has increased by 10% over the last 2 years, and it is expected to grow even more in the future. And that means it is more important than ever to develop ways to sustainably produce electric cars. And that includes sourcing the components that are used to produce what makes an EV, the battery. Graphics specializes in the development of technologies and products used to enhance renewable energy, particularly the production of spherical graphite and graphene, which are key components to electric vehicles' lithium-ion batteries, as well as a slew of other uses and applications. And being able to sustainably produce these components here in the US is absolutely crucial to the long-term adoption and success of the domestication of electric vehicle production here in the United States. To learn more about Graphics, their role in graphite mining, and how this plays towards the shift of electric vehicles, you can check them out at www.graphicsgroup.com. I'd like to thank EQ Analytica for sponsoring this video. When it comes to leasing, there are oftentimes 3 major components as to why people choose leasing over buying and financing. First is that leasing has traditionally been less expensive than buying. Number 2 is the maintenance factor. Oftentimes people choose leasing over buying simply because they don't want to have to deal or pay for the maintenance on their vehicle, and leasing offers them an out for that. And number 3, the tax incentives. But I want to talk about why all of these different factors are basically negated if you just simply buy the right car at the right price, and why regardless of which car you're buying, which price point you're buying it at, or how long you plan on keeping that car, buying is 99.9% of the time going to make more sense than leasing for the general public. But don't worry, it isn't all bad, because there are a couple of different reasons as to why leasing may actually make more sense, and I am going to be addressing those reasons as well. First, let's talk about the cheaper argument, that leasing is in fact cheaper than buying, and thus leasing is a more attractive option. Back a few years ago, even as recently as during the pandemic, leasing actually was cheaper than buying. You could get a high-end luxury car, something like a Cadillac, a Lexus, even a Mercedes, for maybe $300 a month for a couple of $1,000 down payment, and in some cases, you could maybe even get a $0 down payment if you're somebody with a really good credit score. But today in 2023, times have changed, and you're now paying a multi-$1,000 down payment with an extremely monthly payment on top of that. For example, here are just a few of the lease deals that are advertised by Kelley Blue Book, and keep in mind, these are considered to be some of the most attractive lease options that are available today in the fall of 2023. A GMC Acadia, which you can get for $4,298 down with a $299 per month payment for a 24-month lease. A Chevy Colorado with a $4,794 down payment with a $339 monthly payment for a 36-month lease. And last but not least, a Nissan Sentra, which you can get for a $3,299 down payment with a monthly payment of $289 for a 36-month lease. These lease deals are, well, terrible. You compare this to what we saw back in 2020, you actually saw very similar figures, but they were being applied to significantly nicer cars. Like a BMW X1 Cross, which over 2020 was being offered for $299 per month for 36 months with $4,999 due at signing. Today, that same car is $569 per month for 36 months with $5,099 due at signing. Or Lincoln Corsair, which was previously offered for $373 per month for 39 months with $3,694 due at signing. Today, this same car would cost you $433 per month for 48 months, and $4,211 would be due at signing. So leases pretty much across the board are going up, and previously luxury brands that cost $200 to $300 per month are now costing anywhere between $500 and $600 per month, and now normal everyday brands are costing $200 to $300 per month. So all prices, regardless of the segment of vehicle, are going up, making this a much less attractive option. All the while, you're not building equity into the car that you're driving, because the payments that you're paying are going towards the lease and they're not going down paying towards the note, which means that whenever it's time to sell that car, you can't sell it because you don't own it. And this is truthfully my biggest problem with leasing. You pay hundreds of dollars each and every month for a car that you have to turn in at the end of the lease, and at the end of that lease, you have absolutely nothing to show for the payments that you've made. And I know that oftentimes people who like leasing will use the argument of, well, I like to get a new car every few years, so leasing makes sense. And to that, I have 2 counter arguments. The first is that just because you like to do something doesn't necessarily mean that that is a smart thing to do. Buying a new car every few years for the vast majority of people, no matter how you slice it, is a poor financial decision. Now, for some people, they make enough money to justify that purchase. They don't really care that it costs them a lot of money to buy a new car every single year. They value the idea of having a new car, and thus they make that purchase. And to those people, I say more power to you. But again, just because something can be justified and just because people do it doesn't mean it's a good decision. I could justify eating out every single day by using the argument of it saves me time, it's more convenient, it allows me to work more because I'm spending less time cooking, but that doesn't mean that it's a smart decision to eat McDonald's over eating at home. And believe me, I love McDonald's. And truthfully, the same thing can be said for leasing. And the second argument that I have to this is that if you buy the right car at the right price, you can actually own that car for free by selling it for the same price you bought it for, if not slightly more or slightly less. This is something that I talk about all the time in the context of Turo, but it absolutely can be applied to your normal everyday cars as well, ones that you're not renting out on Turo and you're using for personal use. In fact, there's a YouTuber named PJ with Exotic Car Hacks. I had him on my channel last year, and his channel is dedicated to this idea of buying ultra high-end or exotic cars at the right price, owning them for a period of time, and then selling them at the right time and at the right price, and thus giving you the ability to own that exotic car for free. This is a very real thing and absolutely can be done by the average Joe. You just have to be very strategic with what type of car you choose, what price point you buy it at, and most importantly, what price point you sell it at. One of the best examples of this is the Toyota 4Runner. A Toyota 4Runner you can buy brand new for around $54,000 for the TRD Pro trim model. On the used market, there are many TRD Pros that are selling just slightly below that price point. For example, this 2021 TRD Pro, which is selling for $53,870 with almost 45,000 miles on it. This previous TRD Pro owner owned this car for 2 years, they put 45,000 miles on it, and at the end of the day, that cost of ownership will only cost them a couple of $100s per month, and that not only includes the actual car payment, but also insurance, gas, tires, maintenance, and things like that. Now tell me a TRD Pro that you can lease for only a couple of $100s per month. You can't. If you were to lease this exact same type of car, it could easily cost you $10,000 to $15,000 over the course of that lease term. And in this case, buying would make so much more sense over leasing. But Toyota 4Runners aren't the only type of car that can do this. You can apply this to so many different types of vehicles, from SUVs to compact cars, luxury cars. The opportunities are endless. And while it is more difficult to do this with a new car because new cars just don't hold their value as well as used cars, and cars like the Toyota 4Runner are the exception, not the rule, there are a ton of opportunities to do this in the used market, and all you have to do is make sure that you buy the right car at the right price and you pay a below market value price for that car. That way, whenever you go to sell that car a couple of years later, you can actually break even, or in some cases even make some money. By doing this, you can own a car, even a luxury one, for a significantly cheaper price than you would have been able to have that car if you would have leased it. And that entire time, you retain control of that car and you don't have to worry about giving the car back, going over in mileage, or overpaying. The second argument that we often hear in favor of leasing is maintenance. In fact, whenever I was doing research for this video, I saw a ton of different comments online of people using maintenance as a reason for why they leased. Saying things like, I lease because I don't want to have to worry about maintenance. I'm too busy to worry about maintenance. I don't want to have to pay for maintenance. I, in general, don't really like whenever people use the maintenance argument to justify either leasing a car or buying a new car. This is something that I see all the time, where people say that they purchased a 2023 model vehicle because they need a reliable car and they don't want to have to worry about their car breaking down. The same can be said for leasing as well. Maintenance and how much maintenance your vehicle requires is going to come down to what type of car you buy. It's as simple as that. If maintenance is a major concern for you, I wouldn't consider buying anything other than a Toyota or a Lexus, or some other car with good maintenance records. If the cost of maintenance is a concern for you, then I would argue that you probably can't afford to lease either. And if maintenance cost is your #1 priority, then you probably should be buying a used, reliable car, something like a Toyota. But the idea that newer cars are inherently more reliable than older cars, it just simply isn't true, and thus this devalues the argument for getting a lease. And when you lease a car, you may not be paying for that maintenance up front, but you are paying for that maintenance in some way, shape, or form, because don't think for 1 second that the maintenance cost of that vehicle hasn't been incorporated into your lease payments by the dealership. The fact is, I think maintenance is a huge reason why you should or shouldn't buy a car, and it should be one of the top things that you look at whenever you're doing your own due diligence. But maintenance, or the lack of maintenance, shouldn't be a reason why you choose to lease over buy. Because I personally believe that the financial benefit of buying over leasing far outweighs the benefit of leasing simply because of maintenance costs. And last but not least is taxes. Oftentimes, leasing is associated with businesses and business owners because there are a handful of tax benefits that business owners can take advantage of if they lease a car versus if they buy one. This is, of course, assuming that you're using this leased car for business use. But the truth is, there are also a slew of benefits to buying a car for business use as well. When leasing a car, you can deduct the entire cost of ownership from your taxes, assuming the car is used for business use. But if you purchase a car, you can deduct the depreciation of that car from your taxes, or alternatively, you can deduct the mileage if you choose to go that route instead. You can potentially deduct maintenance, you could deduct expenses like gas, tolls, etc., and you can deduct interest payments as well. And while there are limitations to how much you can deduct in relation to the overall value of the car, depending on the type of car you buy, you could potentially deduct the majority of the value of that car. For example, Section 179, which allows for a 100% deduction, though that will decrease in the coming years. And of course, the exact way that you can take advantage of these deductions will depend on a slew of different factors like what type of car you buy, the price point you buy it at, your income, your tax situation, and of course, the use of the vehicle as well. The point is that leasing a car offers a ton of tax benefits, but so does buying a car, and you'll need to look at your individual tax situation to see which one of these two options is best for you. But the idea that you have to lease a car in order to get the full tax benefit from that purchase, that just isn't true, and I would argue buying a car is significantly better. But of course, I am not a tax expert, so you would absolutely want to talk to your accountant in order to plan any vehicle purchases. Now, a couple of scenarios where it could make sense to actually lease versus buy is number one, if you are somebody who is wanting to buy a company car where your employees are going to be driving that. In this scenario, it more often than not will make sense to simply lease the car. Unless you yourself want to be invested into finding the right car at the right price, dealing with maintenance, and then selling that car later on, which I would assume probably isn't appealing to most business owners, in which case leasing probably is the smartest route. Another scenario where it could make sense to lease is to lease an electric vehicle in order to qualify for the $7,500 electric vehicle tax credit, as there is currently a workaround that could potentially allow for you to claim the $7,500 EV tax credit not only on the cars that are advertised as qualifying for this EV tax credit, but potentially all EVs on the market today, or at least most. In December, the U.S. Treasury Department issued guidance on interpreting new rules specified in the Inflation Reduction Act. Under law, Congress exempted commercial vehicles, a definition most often applied to medium and heavy-duty trucks. But the Treasury Department said when a dealer buys a vehicle and leases it to a driver, it's a commercial transaction, since the driver or end user does not take the title of the vehicle. Instead, either the dealer or the finance company holding the lease retains ownership and receives a tax credit. The Treasury Department in turn considers leased EVs, not purchased ones, as commercial vehicles. And because the North America battery content and manufacturing rules specifically do not apply to commercial vehicles, any leased EV can qualify for the credit, most notably including those built overseas. Now, with this loophole in the EV tax credit, you could potentially use leasing as a way to get a car that you wouldn't have otherwise been able to qualify for the full $7,500 on. Now, I don't actually know anybody who has done this, nor have I spoken to my accountant regarding this rule because I'm personally not interested in doing this. So if you are somebody who wants to explore this avenue, I definitely would consult an accountant first. But I definitely think it's something worth exploring, but I would make the argument that leasing for the purpose of getting a $7,500 tax credit, well, it may not be worth it. Unless you really want a specific EV and you want the tax credit in order to justify that purchase. The truth is, leasing just doesn't make sense, and more people are beginning to feel this same way. According to a TransUnion study, 3.8 million consumers ended a lease between July of 2021 and June of 2022. And of those 3.8 million people, only 25% of those people chose to lease again. This is a 40% decline from January of 2020. And while we don't have 2023 lease figures, according to KBV, only about 19% of car buyers have chosen to lease in 2022, and this number is continuously declining. The truth is, leasing not only makes less financial sense than it once did, but it's also becoming a less appealing offer as well. Car buyers do not want to have to worry about going to the dealership once every 2 to 3 years to figure out what they're going to do with their current lease and whether or not they need to buy a new car. Car buyers also can't justify leases given the fact that it really isn't less expensive than buying. And dealership incentives encouraging people to lease just aren't as good as they used to be. If you're somebody who's looking to buy a car and you're deciding on whether or not you want to buy or lease, more often than not, buying a below market value car of your choice is going to be the right decision. And that's where you can really come out ahead and make this purchase make a lot of sense. But like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it. So make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.